The story is about a very powerful, handsome demon Young-woo who looks for the opportunity to trap people into signing contracts with him, and a very beautiful young woman named Do-hee who is CEO of a well-established F&B company. Young-won notices a certain someone's time which has ran out who happens to be a gang leader. He goes to end his life as per the contract and kills him with a heart attack, but as he leaves, one of the gang members sees him. Elsewhere, Do-hee's grandmother Madame Ju-chon is upset with her since she doesn't want to get married and plans a blind date for her where Do-hee meets with Young-won who happened to be there. Despite not wanting to get married, she falls for Young-won's hot looks. But since both of them are super arrogant, they start arguing with each other, and the gang members arrive at the hotel. Do-hee gets irritated and stands up to leave the place. One of the gang members hits a waiter with a cake, and as the cake was about to fall onto Do-hee, Young-won quickly saves her and perfectly catches the cake. The time stops for a moment for both of them, and Do-hee seems to have completely fallen for him at this point. As she realizes the situation, she quickly rushes towards the bathroom, where she starts to think that Young-won ordered the cake for her birthday and blushes. But sadly, she later finds out that he had ordered the cake for himself only. She gets disappointed and leaves the place. Later, when she goes to see her Madame Ju-chon, Do-hee finds out that the Young-won was not the guy her Madame Ju-chon set her up with for the blind date. Later elsewhere, Young-won is looking for people in trouble who he can save and make them sign contract with him. Elsewhere, Do-hee is on her way home but notices the guy who's driving her car is not her driver. As she begins to question him, he stops the car and tries to use chloroform on her, but she fools him and runs away from the car. Meanwhile, Young-won notices her in trouble and goes make a deal with her. Do-hee recognizes him from afar and runs towards him for help. Young-won tries to make a deal with her in order to protect her. Despite 1,000 questions in her mind, she accepts his deal. As Young-won steps towards the criminal, Do-hee runs away and gets inside the car, but as she was struggling, a body suddenly drops onto the car. And she notices Young-won slowly coming towards her. She gets scared and again runs away and hides behind the bridge railings. Young-won goes towards her and asks if she remembers the deal. As she holds his hand, Young-won's tattoo glows and they notice the car coming towards them. Young-won tries to use his magic powers but was unable to do so and both jumps into the river. Later, they find themselves on the seashore. Young-won is angry knowing he has lost his powers and grabs Do-hee's hands to check for the tattoo mark. Do-hee is unable to understand what's going on and loses her consciousness, and later wakes up to find herself in a hospital and is surprised to see Young-won being so caring, like if he is her boyfriend. Do-hee notices the mark on her wrist and tries to erase it, but Young-won stops her, asking her not to touch the mark as it's his. Do-hee tries to slap him, but he stops her and learns that he can use his magic as long as his holding on her wrist. Later, Young-won gets notified and goes to end someone's contracts without his powers but gets in trouble and had to escape from there empty-handed. Meanwhile, Do-hee is visiting her Madame Ju-chon who's just getting discharged from the hospital. Later, as they were talking, one of their relatives, Ju-suk, comes there to report his work. As they were leaving, Ju-chan asks them both to get married as him and Do-hee aren't actually related by blood. Ju-suk laughs at the idea of getting married to her, but actually he likes her. As they were getting back home together, he gets to know about Do-hee blind date from Ms. Shin and gets shocked. Do-hee explains to him how it was set up by her Madame Ju-chon. Elsewhere, as asked, Young-sun's butler reports to him about Do-hee's background of how her parents died in a car accident, but since she was a bright student she started her own company and got successful. He also gets to know that she's currently single. Since he's running out of time to end the overdue contracts, he goes to meet with Do-hee. Do-hee offers him money to thank him, but Young-won doesn't take the money and tries to flirt with her to make a connection with her. He says he is unwell and sick, and wants her to spend time with him. They go on a car ride where he asks her to let him hold her hand, and drives to the person he had to end the contract with, and uses his magic to give him a heart attack. Do-hee couldn't understand what just happened. Young-won lies about them being his friends. After that, Young-won takes her to a nearby seashore. He firmly holds her head. Do-hee thinks he's going to kiss her, But he suddenly drags her into the water with him to try and get his tattoo back. But it doesn't work. Doohee kicks him and gets up the water. She gets mad and cries about how everyone is after her life when she didn't do anything wrong, and she leaves from there. Meanwhile, behind her back, a lot of people are planning to kill her to take over the Myri F&B ownership. Doohee gets off of the taxi and notices a news. As she was lost in her thoughts, a biker comes towards her and spills acid onto her. But fortunately, Young-won comes and protects her from harm. Doohee, lost in her thoughts, thinks how despite being so unfamiliar and anonymous, she feels safer around him. She gets worried seeing acid burn marks on him. Young-won holds her hand and uses the magic to heal himself, which she notices. Young-won introduces himself as the devil to her. While on their way back, Doohee has understood everything. Since he needs her to be with him to use the magic powers, she makes a deal with him to be her bodyguard since her life is also in danger. Although Young-won doesn't like the idea of being some human's bodyguard, but this is exactly what he is doing right now. Meanwhile, the criminal watching them from afar leaves from there. He is mad about how he is again unsuccessful of getting his hands on Doohee. Elsewhere, Young is mad from the thought of becoming a human's bodyguard, but at the same time he's also worried about how someone might kill her and dispose of her body. As he was thinking, he receives a message from Doohee. Doohee threatens him to be her bodyguard or she will get the tattoo laser removed. Later in the morning, he notices that he has started to burn since he hasn't made any deals with humans for a long time. He calls Doohee and agrees to be her bodyguard. He asks her to meet with him outside, and takes her to a hospital, where he signs a contract with a mother in exchange for her daughter's life. Witnessing all this, Doohee gets mad at Young-won calling him selfish to use people's misfortune to his advantage and leaves from there. The next day, they go to meet with her Madame Juchon, and she finds her dead and cries. She begs Young-won to bring her back and she'll sign any contract he wants, but he refuses since he cannot bring back the dead. Later, during the family discussion, it gets revealed that she took the wrong medicine as she had died. Doohee internally thinks that she was actually murdered by someone. But the other family members don't want to ruin their plan to get to have the property, and they decide to keep it a secret. Later, it's revealed that before dying, Madame Ju has named her property and all the assets to Doohee instead of her real children. But to get the authority, Doohee needs to get married. Doohee knows that one of her family members has killed Madame Juchon. Doohee goes towards Young-won and asks him to marry her. Let me know what you think about this cute couple and subscribe for more.